My brother created a fake wedding just to humiliate me. Me, 30-year-old female, and my brother, 31-year-old male, have always been as close as twins. Our closeness is a foundation in our family. One of the true consistent relationships, obviously not in a weird way. When we fight, which is never, or small fights, the whole family feels it and tries to fix it because of how unnatural it feels for everyone. He gave me away at my wedding. I named a child after him. We have matching tattoos. We talk on the phone almost every day. He started planning his wedding. He asked me to be a groomsman, while his friend, 35-year-old-ish female, would be his best man. Everyone thought this was odd because of his role at my wedding, and none of us really know/have met his friend. I expressed how it hurt my feelings and was met with, "My wedding isn't about you." Okay, fine, I'll do what you ask. During the planning, he called me every day. We sent ideas, I helped with making stuff, I didn't mind. I decided early on to not focus on titles, but just to make this day as amazing as possible for my brother. He asked me to be Flower Fairy because this was a gay child-free wedding. I agreed. During the process of dress/shoe picking, him and the best man would shoot down all of my ideas. She would send very basic heels that were around $100. Heck no. I told her my budget was $45 for shoes, especially for plain gold heels. The wedding party all had very mean girly mentality. I felt it from day one. There was the wedding party, and then me. I chalked this up to not really knowing them well and proximity. All of them live in a different state than me. They even went as far as saying the shoes I like were too dirty. They were the type of small heels that place up around your calf or around your ankle. After this, I begged to come as a guest, so I could wear what I want and not feel this weird mean girl mod mentality from the rest of the wedding group. My brother says no way, I can't get married without you being by my side. I get to the state the wedding will be, and the first day I'm there, I find out best man had the bachelor party the night before I got there. Everyone from the wedding party was included aside from me. I let it go and focus on the wedding and doing my part. So I slap on some wings, dance my way down the aisle, and give my very first wedding speech. All goes well. The wedding was awesome until the drag show. Yes, they had a drag show at their wedding. During the show, one of the queens comes on and basically announces that this was all fake because my brother and his partner had gotten married 1 year prior. I turned to the rest of the wedding party and asked, did they know? They did. They were at the real wedding. Everyone but me. I'm sitting there trying to process, and my mom, who gave them $3,000 for the wedding because they needed it, storms up to ask if I knew. I told her no, and she immediately switched to being supportive to me because of how bad the situation was. It's not about them already being married. They can do what they want. I myself spent over $4,000 on this wedding. Because I was coming from out of state, I had to get a plane ticket. I paid for a week at an Airbnb. One night, most of the wedding party stayed at the house I rented because they didn't have anywhere else to stay and did not even offer to pay for any of it. The dress for the wedding, the fairy wings I handmade, all of it. I spent too much time and money on this wedding, but then I start to remember all of the lies. They got married, and 3 days after, my brother was at my house while I was giving birth to my last child because I always wanted him to be a part of my huge moments. He held my newborn, knowing he had just gotten married, and said nothing. They gaslit me, saying I was crazy feeling left out. Him saying he can't get married without me. Lying to my face every single day for a year. Just all of it. After realizing all of this, I tried to leave without making a sense. His husband mockingly asked me if I was mad. I said I'd talk to them another day and they should enjoy their night. I was able to leave without anyone else at the wedding knowing I was upset. Before I could leave, the happy couple pulls me into a room. My brother is crying, saying he didn't do this to hurt me. I keep it together, say enjoy your night and we will talk another day. His husband says, oh, so there is something to talk about then. I repeat, we can talk another day. They ask me to brunch. I say, I'll see if I'm up/ready for it when they go. The next morning, I realize the whole wedding party and some guests are going to lunch. I choose not to go because I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm ganged up on, again, over my feelings about the wedding and wedding party. After that, I left the wedding chat on Snap, which they were notified of. At this point, it's the next morning, and his husband starts blowing me and my friend, who was with me, up. We ignore and go about our day. I have not looked at or spoken to my brother since, aside from short responses to get me to the airport the day I left. When I left, I asked them to crop me out of the wedding photos as I didn't want to be associated with a fake wedding and didn't want a reminder of how embarrassing it was and how stupid I looked. I told them I didn't want to speak to them again. My brother says nothing and his husband says, You're a narcissist and I feel bad for the people who have to deal with you. Pretty sure narcissistic more aligns with tricking 100 people into coming to a wedding, some of the wedding that was paid for by other people, just to tell everyone, haha, this was just a giant party for us. Joke's on you. It's probably more narcissistic than me reacting to the time, money, energy spent to attend a fake wedding. But alright, I just don't know where to go from here. I have them both blocked. There was a line in our family. My brother has not tried to fix it. He had the chance to show me what I meant to him. He did, and now I have to believe him. I'm going to try and update in sections. 1, I guess to answer if he is in an abusive relationship that really is up to each person to decide. I will not, and won't label him as abusive because I'm not in that relationship with him. My mentoring of the drag queens was because they are a part of the story. Hello, it was one of the queens that made the announcement? I'm not sure why some of you are taking that as me being anything phobic. Mentioning that somebody is gay or that drag queens attended a wedding is a part of a story and it's factual. It's not anything phobic. Our family, as well as new husband's family, have always been nothing but supportive and accepting. My mom has 2 kids who are very hurt. She could never hate my brother, but she definitely does not like the decisions that he has been making. She is doing her very best to support her 2 children. Gay wedding, no kids allowed. 2 separate statements. They definitely did not ban gay children from their wedding. I mentioned both of these things to explain why I was a flower fairy. No kids, flower girl. Fairy to go along with the gay/dragon theme. Hello people, I proudly slap those wings on and dance my way down the aisle. That is definitely not anything phobic. For those of you who are saying anything along those lines, you were definitely reaching and projecting. Using narcissistic when it actually does not apply to the person, in my opinion, is trying to weaponize. More info in the comments. Top questions. For some reason, I cannot edit my post to add this, so hopefully most of you will see it. Me and new husband, as far as I know, did not have any hard feelings going into the wedding. There was a time when they were dating that I expressed I didn't like the fact that my brother was working 2 jobs for a new husband to try to become a music producer. I watched my brother kill himself for years to try to support both of them while he sat around smoking weed in his studio, and ever since then, new husband decided that I hate him, even though we have since squashed all of those issues when he got a job and started contributing. Even when we did not get along, I always made it very clear if my brother loves you, then I love you too. Both families have been very supportive. There is no homophobia or anything like that on either side. Is my brother in an abusive relationship? I don't know. I guess that's what each individual person would consider abusive. I don't want to unfairly label my brother's partner as abusive when I'm not in the relationship myself, and my brother has never expressed feeling abused. I think if you consider this behavior manipulative and abusive, then that's up to your own discretion. However, I am not going to give anyone that label. I didn't decide this was a fake wedding. They did when they decided to announce in the middle of the ceremony that they were already married. They made it a fake wedding when they announced that it was fake. 5. Russian bots? Pushing propaganda? Okay people, I only mentioned the fact that there was a drag show at the wedding because that is a very uncommon thing. I found out that my brother had been married for a year and had been lying to my face via drag queen announcements. That is just stating the facts. That has absolutely nothing to do with the drag community or how myself or anybody else should feel about them. They were paid to do a job and they showed up and did what they were paid to do. I have no ill will towards anybody in any type of community. Those of you who are saying me mentioning them comes off as judgmental are very much reaching. For those of you who think it's weird that I did not mention that he was gay, why is that weird? And why is that relevant to the story? The people who had their panties in a wad probably have more of an issue with the community than I do. Stop making this post about anything other than what it is about. At the end of the day, I am mourning the loss of my brother. I am mourning the relationship that I thought him and I had. And to be honest, based off of my perspective of our closeness, I am honestly questioning my own sanity. Do you generally spend hours talking to somebody, getting matching tattoos, planning a wedding, being at holidays and childbirth with somebody that you're not close with? At least on my end, I did not make up how close I was with my brother if it was not reciprocated, and he is a very good actor. And honestly, me questioning our closeness has been the most hurtful part about this entire experience. It's made me question if I'm crazy or not. Gay wedding, child-free. 2 separate statements. It was not a wedding where they did not invite gay kids. For anyone who read it like that, you are extra weird. My brother is obviously gay and got married to a man. Therefore, it is a gay wedding. Children were not allowed to attend the wedding. therefore child-free. Two separate things, people. Both are okay. And I also want to say that I would never have slapped fairy wings on my back and danced down the aisle if I was not 100% supportive of them. Please stop trying to make this an issue other than two siblings having a falling out. Another comment. Okay, so I feel like you are very much twisting the story. I did not make sure everyone knew I was leaving the wedding. I actually left very discreetly at almost midnight when the wedding was ending at 1 a.m. I did not make my brother cry. His now husband kept trying to force a conversation that I asked respectfully multiple times to not have the night of the wedding, so that way it would not ruin their day. I showed up in every single thing my brother asked of me. I took the bullying, and I kept my mouth shut for most of it after I was accused of trying to make the wedding about me. From that point on, I went out of my way to do everything I could to make his day as special as I could for him. Comment about her husband. Brother tried to contact my husband to ask how to pay back what I spent to come to the wedding. My husband said that he was not going to get involved. Brother tried to convince my husband that I was overreacting. My husband told brother that is absolutely not true, and I have every right to be upset, and what he did was bonkers. My husband very much has been supportive, but also is very sad to see me and my brother fighting like this. Update 1. I'm the flower fairy. I'm going to do my best to put as much information as I can, but it ends up really long and Reddit will not let me post. So I'm going to try to answer all of the questions and I'm going to paraphrase a lot. The update is, there is no update. Things are the same. They are still blocked. One suggestion was that I should write him a letter, which I actually did do the day after this happened, and I left it in his room. I laid out all of my feelings and described it in detail, how hurt I was. We had a 2-hour drive where he said absolutely nothing even after reading my letter. I did end up losing all of my manners when I landed, and my husband informed me that he sent him a message basically saying that I was overreacting. I said a lot of things that I was not very proud of. At the end of the day, I stand by my truth, and I stand by my perspective of what happened. Please stop trying to make this a phobia issue. Both families have been nothing but supportive. They represent themselves, not an entire group of people. Stop being so simple-minded. The mention of drag queens was only there because one of the queens announced that they had gotten married a year ago. Plus, how many times do you see a drag show at a wedding? If you read some imaginary undertone, that is definitely a you issue. Moving on. New husband, in my opinion, is not somebody that I would label as abusive. However, abuse is subjective. I think this more falls down to him being very emotionally immature. I am not a yes man. I was for the wedding. That's an appropriate time to be a yes man. Outside of that, new husband has always been intimidated by my opinion. I think he knows I can see through his BS. Weak men hate strong women. That's a fact. And that's the case here. However, we did not have any type of beef on the wedding day or for years before. I made it clear if my brother loves you and wants to spend his life with you, then I support that. My mom is trying her best to be as supportive as she can to both of her kids. She could never hate my brother, although she absolutely hates what he did. As far as I go, I don't know who I am without my brother. He was just as important to me as my children and my husband. It was always me and him. To say that I am mourning is an understatement. This whole situation has made me question a 30-year relationship. Realizing his capability to live a double life that I'm not a part of has rocked my entire world and my entire sense of reality. I'm not okay. I'm going to spend the next year being no contact. I'm going to go to therapy and get my mind, body, and soul in the best place possible, while pushing as much good karma into the world as I can. Maybe then I will be able to decide if I want to close that door fully and permanently, or if I'm at a place where I'm willing to create a new normal with him. At the end of the day, I am absolutely devastated and heartbroken. I also want to address frequently asked things. 1. Baby was number 5. No fear of being overshadowed. The date that they got married was because it was a dating anniversary for them, nothing to do with me or my pregnancy. 2. I am aware that people get married and have a large ceremony later. That's okay. It's not what they did, it's how they did it. 3. I am not a Russian bot trying to push propaganda, lol. Those comments did make me laugh though. 4. If I had the answer to why they would feel comfortable doing this to me, then I guess I wouldn't be as dumbfounded as I am. I'm not leaving out any type of detail. Honestly, it would be a lot easier if I did something so horrible to deserve this, because then I wouldn't have to wonder why. I'd know. At the end of the day, I'm not okay. I don't know if there's anything he could do to fix this. I'll always wonder if he's telling me the truth or what he's hiding. After the way that his husband spoke to me and after him allowing him to do that, I'm honestly so disgusted with both of them. I deleted the original post because I didn't want them to be attacked. Sadly, I still have a need to try to protect him. I don't know, you guys. Update. The brother-in-law appeared and made a comment in the original post. Brother-in-law here. I'll just start by saying, for one, having a big wedding ceremony 1 year later was not my idea, but once we decided that we were going to do it, we consulted many times about telling people beforehand for fear of things like this happening. I've never had a great relationship with OP, but we've tried to make things work mostly for my husband, her brother, because I knew they were very close. And while I wasn't too fond of her due to our interactions in the past, I know how important those close relationships are and would never wish to tear that apart. OP didn't want to talk about it at all. We tried to apologize and explain that the intention was never for any humiliation or insult to happen at all, but she wouldn't have any conversation about it, especially the night of. The next day at the Airbnb, I tried to open a dialogue with OP about how she was feeling, and she only responded with snark and comments about how there's nothing to talk about. That's the small conversation where the "so there is something to talk about" statement was said by me. I eventually let it be and left the room. Everything that was said by her didn't help me or anyone understand really how she felt about it, and the little she did say seemed very self-centered and about how this was a plan to humiliate her specifically, which it was most definitely not. Reading through this now, though, I do understand a bit more why she felt that way, and for that, I truly am sorry. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure how these work or if there's a proper way to post this, but ask me anything, I guess. User 1 reply. All I'm going to say is, you both are married now and you made your choice. You both are a partnership. You both collectively decided to do this and decided it was a good idea and the consequences that came with it. I want nothing to do with either one of you ever again. That's it. There's no reason or purpose to keep having an open dialogue about this because it's done. And you starting out your post with "you don't like me" pretty much confirmed everything that I said. I wish you and him nothing but happiness, but this conversation is over. I've heard your side of things and it still isn't good enough to justify what you both did, and I'm choosing to walk away from both of you. He admits in the text above he knew. He literally says we didn't want to tell people because they were there and happy. He knew what he was doing. It was a huge manipulation. Lying to people to get what you want is manipulation. Omitting things from people to not give them the power to make a fair choice is also very much manipulation. They knew what they were doing. At the sentence, the other people said, "Brother doesn't value sister the same way." That's it. That's the end of the argument. They both showed me exactly what I meant to them. The motivation behind it is not really important anymore. Maybe this was just a total oversight and a mistake, but regardless, the result was the same, and the consequence remains the same. I want nothing to do with y'all. I wish you happiness because I will always love him. If you make him happy, then I am so happy for the both of you. Truly, I am. Our relationship was the sacrifice for this day, and you both decided to make it. I reacted to it and was trying to sort through my feelings by posting on this podcast. I did not expect for it to go so viral, so for that I am sorry. I did try to remove this post, but it was too late. I realized that you don't like me due to past interactions, and that's fine. So what I am about to say won't matter. My heart is completely shattered. I'm literally going through a mourning process like someone died, because that night the relationship him and I had died. He has always been my person. He isn't now, and I've never felt more alone. I honestly don't know if I'm going to be okay. Both of your responses just confirm everything I said and everything I felt. You have your side, I have mine. But ultimately, everyone is feeling the loss of me and him. This changes everything in the family. I'm going to continue to root for both of you, always. But I am going to do it from my side of the world. In an emergency, either of you can call me and I'll be there. But outside of that, I am good on both of you. You don't like me, I'm out of your life now. You don't get to defer to him when it comes to me, but want to orchestrate our conversation after he did what he did. You are not a safe place for me, just like I'm sure you feel like I'm not either. You win, go be with him, go have a happy life. User 2, commented to BIL. I have some questions. Why did the brother not tell her you were married for an entire year? I get surprising most of the guests, but his sister and mom? It feels very mean. I know people who hold secrets as a method of punishing the other person, and this is definitely in that territory. Even your mom told you to tell them. Why wasn't OP allowed to back out of the wedding party? And it sounds like you were aware of how poorly this would go ahead of time, but still chose to follow through on the plan. Did you really call her a narcissist? I get not intending to cause harm and humiliation, but you didn't do anything to prevent it either. You decided that everyone else's reactions was their own fault/responsibility, which is pretty callous. She was probably too upset to articulate her feelings adequately at the time, so it was too soon for a conversation. Based on his reactions and the way this was planned out, all sounds like maybe her brother does not actually value the relationship the same way she does, and she needs to let it go. User 1. The decision to keep it a secret was, in hindsight, a bad choice, I'll admit openly for sure. As for the rest of it, it's tough because while it was definitely tense between us, I never wanted to make anything worse. So if I ever had to deal with OP in any way, I would always defer to her brother on how to do so. Me reading all of this was the first time I'm ever hearing about her wanting to back out of the wedding party, so when it comes to that, I have absolutely no idea. To be honest, I'm a diagnosed ADHD haver, so I'm not super great at planning, and anyone who knows both of us knows brother is the type A planner person, so I wasn't as involved in the wedding party/planning thing. I wish I said what I said in a different way, but yes, I did say that after she refused to talk to anyone for 2 days and once brother drops her off at the airport, she decides to put us both in a text group chat and absolutely go off about how she can say her piece and she can stand by her truth and she won't hear a word of anything else from anyone else. I know it was mean, and at the time I did want to convey that. I wish I didn't say it, but it's too late. About the surprise, hindsight is 2020. I was very fearful of a grand upset, and I'm pretty sure brother was too. We talked about it, but it was like one of those things where someone texts you and you forget to text back, and then after a while it's just too awkward to say anything because it's been too long. Obviously, the magnitude of these things are vastly different, and I'm aware of that, but when we decided we were going to do it, we just stuck to our guns, and the time just flew by, and before you know it, it's the week of the wedding, and people are here from out of town, and there's so much to do, and by that point, we thought about telling specifically her and some of their key family members. But figures, well, it's been so long already, and rather than have a possible huge blowout that could be so bad, it could maybe result in the wedding not even happening. Everyone seems so happy right now, so we'll just wait and hope for the best, and well, here we are. Dumb decisions were made, and that sucks. That comment is the only mean thing I said to her that entire week, and it was after trying so hard to smooth things over specifically with her and her brother and getting cold shoulder followed by weird accusations. She can hate me and that's fine, but brother doesn't deserve the vitriol that was omitted by Opie's post, and I was hoping for things to work out. The section above was particularly my perspective at the time, given that I only had the little bit of her perspective that I had to filter through all the anger it was encased in. I feel a bit more sympathetic now, to be honest. I still don't agree with everything, but I understand more now. And again, I'm sorry for how painful it really was. I wish things could have been done differently. I really do. Sorry for the huge run-on sentences. User 3. So now you're placing the majority of the blame on your husband? OP's brother? Way to be a partner to your new husband. I have ADHD. How does that absolve you from being a person? The only truthful thing I'm seeing here is that you didn't really like OP due to past interactions. User 1. I'm not placing blame on anyone, I'm just saying what happened. The ADHD doesn't absolve anything, nor was it intended to. I'll 100 admit my part of the wrong, but I didn't mastermind anything like everyone else is assuming I did. We made a dumb choice that led to hurt, and I apologize for that truly. But I won't just let 3,000 people accuse me of something I didn't do without at least trying to clarify from my POV. There's a whole arc of crap between me and OP from years ago that was left out completely from her post, and she knows that. Final comment from BIL. Alright, well, I've said my bit. I've apologized. I've tried to smooth things over as much as I have the ability to. I don't have any ill will towards anyone, and I never have. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone, but it did, and that sucks major booty. I didn't mastermind anything. This wasn't my idea. I said a mean thing in the end after being blasted in the texts. No one's perfect. You've made up your minds about me from a one-sided perspective, and that's okay. This is Reddit. At the end of the day, all the people who have opinions on me in this comment section weren't there and don't know the people involved at all in real life. Wish you all the best with your future endeavors. For real, I really do mean it, but yeah. Another member of the wedding party posts. Well, I was at this wedding, though I was not a member of the wedding party. I agree that a lot of what happened with OP on this is screwed up, but I'm calling bullcrap on some of the things that was said by her brother's husband, or at least the tone it was said in, or the way it was interpreted maybe. That man might just be the most stand-up guy I know. He quickly became a best friend of mine when he became my boss over a year ago. I've seen him go above and beyond to help out people he's not even fond of. The only scenario in which I see him doing these types of things is if OP said something she's omitting from the post. Second thing I'm calling bullcrap on. The entire wedding party was not at the lunch the next day. I was there and 2 members of 6 were present. OP's brother's best man was there and so was one other. There was a plan for everyone to go, but everyone had their own thing they needed to do. Lots of stuff needed to be driven around, etc. Again, what happened with OP was screwed up, even from the point of view I heard it from, which was her brother's husband. And I'm sure I know probably 10% of what actually went down with all of this. But there's 2 sides to every story. In this case, there's more like 4. Her not being at their actual wedding makes sense, given that she had just moved to the East Coast and the wedding was on the West Coast. That, and as she mentioned, she gave birth 3 days later. If it was my sister, she would have known at least, and she would have been best man for me at the wedding party, but that's me. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this was exaggerated based on what I know, which again, isn't much. User 1 replied, "There are always 2 sides to a story for sure, but let's take away all the narrative and leave in the main issues here. OP spent a lot of time, effort, and money on the wedding, having been led to believe the whole way through the process that it was a real wedding, when the rest of the groomspeople all knew, except for her, that it wasn't. She was led to believe that she was one of the most important people there. She did what was asked of her by fairy dancing down the aisle, which not everybody would have the guts to do, to only then have it sprung on her that it was all fake in a humiliating way. Man, I'd be so gutted. By doing what they did, how they did it, she probably feels really hurt and like they took away her important part in the wedding in those few short seconds, and then she realized she was the only one who didn't know. Oof, kick a fairy when she's down. It really could have been far better thought out. I'll be honest, I would feel like the butt of the joke and really embarrassed. I think most people would. We all make mistakes and some damage control is certainly needed to rebuild bridges. Hope they work it out. I don't know what I'd do without my brothers and sisters in my life." The other member from the wedding responding, 100%, and I agree with just about everything you said. My point is that she made assumptions about at least 2 things. One of which was the lunch I was at. She assumed it was a big lunch that included everyone but her, when that was far from the case. It was me and 3 others. I picked where we ate 5 minutes before we went. I did nothing more than attend the wedding and stay overnight because I drove 90 minutes there, and most of the actual wedding party wasn't present at that lunch. In fact, the groom said they weren't going because they wanted to talk to and spend time with OP. So what else did she make assumptions about? I don't know, she's assumed her brother's husband put him up to this and that was all his idea. She said that in the comments. That was not the case at all. The whole thing about not telling anyone was her brother's idea. Again, to reiterate, she's valid in feeling the way she does about a lot of these things. And again, I know way less than she does or her brother's husband. But I'm willing to bet that if her and her brother had a conversation about it, a lot of the air would get cleared. Would it completely mend her wounds? No, but they should be willing to try that. I'm surprised to hear he didn't talk at all in the car with her. That's unfortunate. And to be clear, I don't know OP. We shook hands and introduced ourselves at the beginning of the wedding. That's the extent of my knowing her. Clearly, I'm biased because I know her brother's husband well and her brother pretty well at this point too. The other member from the wedding left one final comment. "Well, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. As for me, I'm out of this crap show." Update 2. Moving on. If you're reading this, you're here because you are super invested in my family's tea. But really, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay, or maybe I won't. Either way, I'm going to keep moving forward, and if you want to come along with me, you can follow me on TikTok. I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm just going to use it as a diary/coping/safe space. My name on there is TKARRH29. So where do we stand, everybody? What are we thinking here? I'm trying to sympathize and completely understand the point of view of the wedding party. You know, the brother and the brother's husband. I'm sure they had all their reasons. It's pretty complicated, but we never actually got an explanation for why she didn't know at all. One of the commenters, or someone from the wedding, said that, well, she's on a completely different coast and she was giving birth. And yeah, that's, a valid excuse for him to bring up and say that she couldn't have attended, but it's weird for them to just never bring it up at all or to mention anything. And the same, we didn't even get to hear the rest of the family. The mom was also completely blindsided by this. So at least it wasn't just her, but I think it affects a lot less people in the way that she did, in the sense of, this is my brother, I'm going to give everything that I can, and my time and my energy and my effort and my money, and make sure I do whatever I can to make sure his day is special, only to find out that this is just a rerun of something that had happened a while ago. And again, that whole fairy thing, it depends on how embarrassed she really felt about it, but it, a lot of people, like that guy said, wouldn't have the guts to do that. And then to be dressed up in this little fairy outfit and for them to be like, oh, by the way, this doesn't matter, has got to feel, embarrassed. There's just got to be so many feelings. And again, I'm sure they had their reasons. I'm sure there's more to it. It's hard to kind of, as many sides of the story as we can get, it's hard to fully grasp every part of the picture. But I feel the most for her. And she's repeated it so many times about just how just gutted and just heartbroken and devastated she is. And that sucks. And it sucks for both sides because, if you have siblings or anything like that, it's so hard for this discourse in the family. It's so hard for there to be trouble between siblings or any part of your relatives. And it just feels like until you mend that bond, nothing's kind of right. So I hope that they find a way to mend that and move past it and move on and move forward together, because, who else do you have but your own flesh and blood? 30 plus years of your basically twinship, I wouldn't throw it out the window for a mistake. There is always forgiveness. There is always understanding to be had. So, wishing the best for him. Story 2. Am I wrong for not supporting my wife's surrogate pregnancy? My wife and I have been married for about 3 years, together for 5. She has a 16-year-old daughter she gave birth to when she was a teen, but we both decided we won't have children, her and I. My wife's best friend asked her to surrogate for him and his husband, and she agreed. I opposed to this, but she told me to deal with it. I told her fine, but don't expect any help from me. Now she's uncomfortable being pregnant. She feels nauseous, tired, and sore. I still do the things I would do if she wasn't pregnant, but when she complains about cravings or needing something from the store for her pregnancy, I tell her to call her best friend. Her best friend and his husband are calling me the butthole, but I remind them that this isn't my baby and not my responsibility. Relevant comments. User 1. Whose egg was used to make the embryo? Hoping not hers. That would just take this to a whole different level. Are they paying her a surrogate fee? I feel sorry for OP. I would not be surprised if he leaves her over this, and I really couldn't blame him. Her ignoring his views is very hurtful. OP. No, it's not my wife's egg. It was a donor. Not sure who, but she doesn't have any connections to me or my wife. Well, at least not before this. Replying to a comment saying she wants no children with OP, but willing to be a surrogate. This is unfair to my wife. I mean, we both don't want children of our own. My wife is happy only having her daughter, and I'm happy being just a stepdad. On if his wife is getting paid. Nope, they're not paying her. They are paying all the medical and legal fees involved, but not paying my wife. I don't think my wife even considered getting paid for this. Update. Hello everyone, my wife and I had a talk and agreed on a few things. She says she's sorry for making this decision despite my objections. We had a lengthy heart-to-heart about it. We agreed that we would go to marriage counseling after the pregnancy is done and she's had some time to recover. We also agreed that she should live with her best friend and his husband for the time of the surrogacy. We talked to them and they both agreed to it. Her daughter, my stepdaughter, said she wanted to stay in our current home. She doesn't feel comfortable intruding into someone else's home, so she's staying with me at our home. My wife very rarely apologizes. I don't want to give up on this marriage, so I'm willing to work through this. Additional info from OP. User 1. How far along is she? This doesn't seem healthy for your marriage, especially if she is in the first trimester. Months apart while you're in charge of your stepdaughter? Why can't you just start marriage counseling now virtually? She apologized but is now running away to be babied by her friends while you're at home alone with her daughter? OP. How far along is she? About 6 months in. Months apart while you're in charge of your stepdaughter. we're not gonna not see each other for all those months. She'll primarily stay at her friends to make sure that her and the baby are comfortable. We also discussed that if her or her friends don't feel comfortable, she will move back in and will figure something else out. Also, my stepdaughter is pretty independent and responsible. She's 16, so it's not like I'm taking care of a baby. And we agreed that my stepdaughter can see her mom at any time if she needs to. You know what? I like this. Too often on Reddit, you have these stories where someone is kind of talked at or disrespected and berated or, whatever the case, just not talked to in a great way. And a lot of the comments just so quickly go to divorce, leave your significant other, move on, forget that guy or forget that girl. She or he clearly doesn't respect you or care about you if they're going to treat you in this way, which is very fair of a statement to begin with. But, taking into account just how we're all humans and we all make so many just crappy, foolish decisions. I'm sure you can reflect on 30 of them right now, at least I can, where maybe I didn't treat somebody the way I wanted to, or didn't articulate my feelings or my thoughts, or conveyed what I wanted to, how I wanted to in the moment. And we're so in the moment, and that doesn't necessarily reflect how I do care or feel about somebody, and forgiveness needs to exist. I mean, you can't just one and done and write things on the wall. And I know it's so rare. People do rarely change fundamentally. And, I think if anybody is willing to work on themselves and really try, that doesn't mean you have to give anybody that chance. But I do love the idea in a relationship, especially a marriage, where you've committed to each other to continue to try and build and try and love and make things worse. Obviously, if it's not working, it's not working. But I don't know. I have a hard time with the idea of quitting. But, there's also people who rush into some marriages and they realize that, maybe this wasn't the right person for me. So this whole thing, I do like the idea where he's able to keep working on it. He's like, no, we're going to get past this. We'll figure it out. We'll do some therapy. We'll keep moving on. And he's kind of taken it in stride because she did really just ignore all his feelings about the surrogacy in the beginning. He's like, well, you know what? Deal with it. And at least that her friend is taking care of her now. It's that situation is pretty weird too. And they didn't really talk about it at all much. So, problems aside, I'm just happy that they're willing to continue to work on themselves. We gotta love it. You gotta love progression and love, and hopefully the baby's okay and they are taking care of it. Story 3. Am I the butthole for keeping score with my family and ruining dinner? I, 27-year-old male, am the third of 4 siblings and have always felt like an afterthought. Lori, 33-year-old female, Chuck, 29-year-old male, and Jade, 25-year-old female, have always gotten the first and best from my parents and each other. I get the leftovers if I'm lucky. I haven't gotten a birthday present from any of my siblings in about 10 years, but I still get asked to pitch in for group gifts for each of them every year. On Friday night, we were having a family dinner, and it honestly felt like every other sentence was a dig at me or a less than subtle brag by my siblings about something they have been given by my parents that I was denied. They talked about how nice almost all of our weddings were, but made sure to mention it was okay that my wife and I had a small low-key wedding. And it was okay. We loved it. But they brushed over the fact that my parents paid for all of my siblings' weddings, but not mine, because somehow they couldn't afford it, because they were saving up for Jade's wedding. They brought up how little student loans they have, because my parents helped them. All of them lived on campus at expensive 4-year schools. I lived at home and went first to a very prestigious, very hard to get into, watchmaking school. I got paid to attend this school, so I paid rent at home. My parents paid for my tools, and I appreciate the help. I really do. But they paid $120,000 to $150,000 each for my siblings. They gave me $7,000 for tools, but to them it's equal. When I went back to school on my own, I didn't ask for money and wasn't offered it. When my brother went back to school, they covered everything without him even having to ask. There were many other small moments, comments about cars and other lifestyle choices, but what made me snap was my brother and his wife mentioning their marriage being so great because they do things like spontaneous dates, like the one they had the prior Friday night. The Friday night where my parents called my wife and I last minute to cancel plans, they had to eat dinner at our house because they had to watch Chuck's kids because of an emergency. Turns out that emergency was a dinner for Chuck and my SIL at Texas Roadhouse. I had spent hours making my grandpa ziti and meatballs with homemade marinara because it's my mom's favorite. I wanted more than anything to scream at them, but instead I got up and left without saying a word, and my wife followed me. When my mom called me later to ask why I left, I just explained exactly why. I explained the favoritism, the unfairness, and the fact that it doesn't feel like they care about me. She didn't say much, and I wasn't really looking for an explanation or an apology in the moment. I just felt like it was self-evident, but if she really didn't see it, I'd spell it out. Evidently, at least parts of what I said have been shared with my siblings because now Chuck and Lori are furious at me and saying I ruined dinner, and my mom is upset that I am hurt. They say I'm immature for keeping score. Am I the butthole? Relevant comments. Commenter. NTA. Your siblings are keeping score as well. They use that score to belittle you every time they see you. Your parents, including your mom, who is all of a sudden upset that you are hurt, have allowed that to happen. Your mom is only upset because you finally stood up for yourself and called them out. Keep on keeping score. They certainly will. OP. Honestly, on the phone, she didn't seem agitated at all, but when I started explaining everything, she just kinda got sad, I guess? She got real quiet and didn't say much. Commenter. NTA. I don't know if this is the best solution, but if I were you, I would write everything down just like you told us, then send it to each one of my family members in a group chat, then block them. I would move on from a relationship with them and love them from a distance. Sidebar. Do you and all your siblings look exactly alike? OP. Jade is adopted, so no. But she has always been the baby and been treated as such anyway. My first draft had a lot more background, but it was way over the character limit. I look almost exactly like my paternal grandfather. I even have the same thing with my eyes where they were blue when I was born but have formed a brown ring around the outside as I've grown up. So there's almost no possibility that I'm not my father's son if that's what you're getting at. Jade is on my side incidentally, and she feels awful about the wedding thing, but she didn't find out about them not paying for my wedding until about 6 months ago, which is 6 months after her wedding. She assumed that they had paid for part of my house or something because verbally that had always been the deal. But no, I got to pay for my own wedding, and my parents never honored the long-standing agreement of, we have money saved for each of you, and you can either use it for a wedding or anything else you want as a wedding gift when you get married. This is not Jade's fault. She didn't ask for any of this. She didn't even get to plan her own wedding. My mom and Lori did that. It was extravagant because mom and Lori wanted it to be extravagant. Jade and her husband mostly hang out with my wife and I when they are in town. That has been a pattern for a long time. Family gives her stuff she didn't ask for, I guess, to make up for her early childhood sucking, and it's often at the expense of me. But since she was like 6, she'd always then share it back with me. Jade and I are fine. She shouldn't have been responsible for policing the fairness of the adults in our lives. Commenter. Have you straight out laid all this information in front of your family like you told us? Or have you personally been taking all this in yourself? I'm glad your sibling Jade is empathetic with you. OP. The Friday night phone call with my mom was the first time I laid more than one incident at the time out for anyone. It's also the most thorough I've ever been about explaining any single incident because it's the first time I didn't get interrupted. We were on the phone for 1.5 hours and I was talking for most of it. Commenter. You seem like an emotionally strong person. Sometimes when people know they can't get to you, they can't help but keep trying. Says more about them. Question. If you weren't related, would you even hang out with these people? You do get to choose your family, you know. Don't worry about rocking the boat. Sail your own. OP. I definitely still hang out with Jade and her husband, as well as my grandparents. But my Oma, Dad's mom, already sees me more than anyone else in my immediate family, and my Pop-Pop, Mom's dad, has spent more time with me than the other grandkids since I was a child. I have autism, and he almost certainly would have been diagnosed had he been born today. We both need breaks from crowds, and we have similar sensory issues, so we'd bail on family gatherings to go play bocce for as long as I can remember. Mini update, the next day. I don't know where the best place to put all this is, so I'm putting it here if that's okay. My first draft contained some of this info, but I had to edit a lot of it to get down to the character limit. Some of this has been shared in other comments, but I'm just consolidating it in hopes that it is seen and answers the questions. 1. There is no reason to believe I am not my father's child. The list of genetic coincidences that would be necessary for that to be the case is long and not worth rehashing. He doesn't have any male relatives that could explain it either. He has one sibling, my aunt, and none of his cousins have ever been in his life or even remotely local. I look just like my paternal grandfather. I always have. He died when my father was young, but by all accounts he was a good father and is remembered fondly. 2. My younger sister has been the beneficiary of many, if not most, of the things my parents chose not to give me. But she did not ask for any of that and has been the one of the only people consistently trying to make it right. I mean, for goodness sake, she was trying to fix it when she was 6. She has definitely not seen everything, but what she has seen, she has tried to correct. She is perhaps guilty of assuming the best of people and not asking questions. But she isn't heartless, and getting angry at her isn't going to fix anything. We talked for a long time after I posted this. She had been told she was contributing to a birthday gift for me every year since at least 2018. She gave money to my older sister to buy my wife and I tickets to my favorite soccer team. And then when my wife and I inevitably posted about going to games, she assumed one of the games we went to each year was the gift she had been contributing money towards. There is a lot of backstory there, but the gist of it is Jade and I have always gotten along well, and Jade does not participate in singling me out negatively. She and her husband spend time with my wife and I frequently, usually just the 4 of us. 3. I was definitely favored by my maternal grandfather growing up, but it's not like I got extra gifts or anything. He and I just have very similar personalities, and that showed at a young age. I am on the spectrum, and I feel very strongly that were he my age, he'd have been diagnosed as well. We both struggle mightily with a lot of sensory things, but loud crowds and being surrounded by a lot of disparate sources of noise, like perhaps his loud Italian family, overwhelms both of us. So both of us hide for at least some portion of all family gatherings. Over time, we started hiding together by just leaving to play bocce or locking ourselves in the kitchen to cook. As an adult, he has made comments that indicate he sees that I'm not being given as much, and in the last 2 to 3 years, he has definitely given more items to me than anyone else. Things he wants me specifically to have if/when he passes, and that he wants me to enjoy now. That was definitely a source of tension on Friday. He is quite wealthy, and my older siblings are accusing me of trying to enrich myself based on inheritance. I have no clue what his plans are, and I have not and will never ask. It's not my business. And he has always had a pathological need to make things even. Everyone gets the same number of boxes at Christmas with as near as possible the exact amount of money spent on each recipient, so I do not expect him to behave differently with his estate. I honestly expect that anything that doesn't go to charitable causes will be divided evenly, but I really think it's all going to charity. But where my older siblings see the monetary value of his record collection, I view it as a financial windfall. I just see a beautiful collection of music I get to keep listening to. I'd never sell that. They feel that I am hoarding the antique watches he gave me, the most valuable of which is a 60s Timex Marlin. But again, they just want me to sell them and divide the cash. First of all, they aren't valuable except in sentiment. Second of all, Pop is very much still alive and only gave them to me because he knows I will repair the ones I like and wear them. Selling them would be extremely rude and untitled. They are angry that he gave me his first car, because it does have nominal value even now. Too old to be valuable as a reliable vehicle, not old or rare or desirable enough to be a collector's item. But to me, it's a sentimental item. It was his Sunday car for years, and while I've had to put a lot of work into keeping it running well, it's in excellent cosmetic condition. My older siblings are contesting that actually I am the favorite, and the very measurable and extremely generous financial gifts given to them by my parents are somehow dwarfed by their IMO very inflated estimation of my financial value of the gifts my grandfather has given me recently. 4. My paternal grandmother has openly favored me more and more as I've aged. Again, this is not financial, and to my knowledge, she isn't in a position to leave me an inheritance. Not that I'd even ask that of her. There is an old clock of hers made by a local clockmaker and housed in a handmade cabinet that I used to spend hours looking at when I was really young, that she actually put multiple labels inside of as early as when I was 5 or 6, saying that it belongs to me. But I didn't ask for that. I appreciate it, and I will gladly accept it if she still feels that way when the time comes, but I don't spend the time I spend with her as some sort of plot to steal her clock. I just like hanging out with my Oma. She's a really funny lady, and she likes walking with my wife and I and our dogs. She stays with us in our house on holidays in lieu of staying in the guest house my parents had built for her. My siblings are under the impression that she has somehow supported me financially. Again, unless there is something I am not aware of, she is very much not in the position to do this. 5. My wife and I will be meeting with my parents at some point over the next week to talk. I do not know what to expect, but will be taking the time to write stuff down in preparation. I don't even know what I want from it, but I will be bringing up family therapy. Update, 2.5 months later. So, update time. About a week after that post, my wife and I sat down with my parents and cleared the air. As several people suggested, I wrote down my thoughts and compiled, to the best of my knowledge, a listing and a full accounting of the disparity in what my siblings were given over the years and what I was given. I did actually sit down and do the math, and it turns out that while I was at the technicum, I actually paid my parents more in rent than they ever paid for my tools. But the final reckoning came to between $370,000 on the high end, Jade, to $190,000 on the low end, Chuck, for how much my parents directly gave to my siblings that they never gave me. Sitting down and seeing the full amount all spelled out like that is probably the angriest I got during this whole mess. My parents had been aware that there were discrepancies but really pushed back on the actual amounts until we sat down and went through each major gift/incident case by case, by which point my dad admitted my reckoning was likely conservative. That was more or less the end of any productive talk that night. My dad just claimed they didn't think it had gotten that bad but wouldn't give any details about how they could have possibly not noticed. In the interim, Chuck and Lori continued to escalate their anger, continued to call and text me, my parents, and extended family. I have not spoken to either of them directly since and don't expect to anytime soon. Roughly a week after that first sit down, my mom and dad asked to meet again. Lots was said, but the gist is this. They felt I was doing well and didn't need their help. Basically, they thought I would be fine without them. They admitted they probably live outside their means and gave more to my older siblings than they should have and could never have given me that much. They claimed the timing of my wedding lined up with probably the most dire of their overspending/lack of saving, and that they literally did not have the funds to live up to the promise, especially as they were paying for Jade's tuition, car, and apartment at the time. They have offered money. They have offered to pay for a vacation, a car, all kinds of stuff, but I think they don't really get it yet. My wife and I don't want their money, but we aren't really sure yet what an ideal resolution to this looks like. At least they have admitted they were unfair and are open to working things out. My wife and I spent Easter with Jade and her husband and my grandparents. My mom and dad came over in the evening. This seems to be more or less the new normal for now. Relevant comments. I bet they'll ask you for monetary help with end-of-life costs. That's a bit of why I don't want to accept any gifts from them right now. As it currently stands, if nothing changed about our relationship between now and when they retired, I wouldn't feel any guilt about leaving them on their own. Although I bet anything Jade and her husband would make sure they didn't become destitute. I just really don't think I'd be in a position to be guilted into helping them. If I let them pay off my mortgage though, I know they would try and use that as leverage. I know them too well not to know that's what they'd do. Right now, I don't wish any ill on them. I just wouldn't step in to help them, at least not monetarily. They spent recklessly. I think they still spend recklessly. I don't think any of my pop-pop's frugality or understanding of being poor made its way down to my mom. I think she doesn't remember when she was really little and his company hadn't taken off yet, or if she does, she refuses to take any lessons from it. I don't think they have robust retirement savings, and I don't trust them to live frugally even if they do. I fully expect them to be broke within 5 years of retiring, and don't want them to have a way to try and guilt me into helping. I know Chuck and his family aren't going to feel like they are in a position to help, even if they are. They make great money but always complain about being broke. By no definition are they broke. They just have expensive tastes and trashy friends. And unless there is amending of fences, Lori will likely be too mad at them for babying me by doing the bare minimum and listening to my grievances that she will be glad to see them suffer, especially if she doesn't think there's going to be anything for her to inherit. I really truly think she would discard her own parents without a second thought if they blew through her inheritance. More on Jade and the birthday gifts. I don't really have the time to address everything, but the birthday thing with Jade was addressed in comments on the first post. The short version is she and her husband had been giving Lori money, and a really sizable amount of it turns out, every year to buy my wife and I tickets to see a Union play. Then, when we inevitably posted pictures of us at games, she assumed that at least one of those games was the gift. She even pointed out one of my Instagram posts last year explicitly called it a birth gift. I didn't specify it was a gift from my wife, and to be fair, the comment Jade left on it at the time in retrospect very much reads like she was glad I was enjoying her gift to me. So the reality is, Lori was just straight up stealing a couple $100 from Jade every year for at least 5 years. I love Jade and her husband, and they are very sweet, but they are very naive. Both grew up wealthy, both grew up spoiled, and neither has any real sense of how much things cost. They just genuinely thought tickets to a Union game cost multiple times over what they really do and didn't blink when Lori asked for money for my birthday gift every year. Jade and her husband are not speaking to either of my siblings now. They were both genuinely astonished to hear I hadn't been getting gifts from my siblings. Fun side note, they took my wife and I to a game this spring and paid for everything. Unprompted and not thinking it made up for everything, they just wanted to do a nice thing. I will not pretend Jade is perfect or that you can't tell she's been overly spoiled, but my God does she try hard not to be entitled. She and her husband do well financially in their own right and they share freely. I know she got a leg up, but it's not fair to begrudge her that she didn't ask for it and she has never rubbed it in my face. Unlike Chuck and Lori. She is mortified at how uneven things are. Chuck and Lori are mad it's not continuing. Are your parents aware that Lori has been stealing from Jade? They are. I know they are still in contact with her and her family as well as Chuck and his. Lori and Chuck are the two that have given them grandchildren, and I don't want or expect my parents to turn a cold shoulder to them. I don't intend to pry into their relationship. My parents know what Lori did. How they want to approach it is their business. In the meantime, my own relationship with my parents is strained and pretty low contact, and I'd rather focus on that. I don't really have any real relationship with either of my older siblings, and I can't see myself ever caring enough to try. If either of them has a come to Jesus moment and genuinely wants to make things right, they know where to find me. One more thought from OP on not wanting money from his parents. I believe if I let my parents give me money, which I'm not sure they even have, they will consider us even, and not actually address the fact that even without the money, I was treated differently. Until I have reason to believe the offer of money is coming from anywhere other than an attempt to get back into my good graces and buy my forgiveness, I'm not interested. My wife and I both work and earn good money. We are by far the least well off of my family, but we are comfortable, and we have savings and retirement savings, which may be more than could be said for the others, except Jade and her husband. I don't see or speak to my parents as much as I used to, and so far that's been fine by me. If they want to actually self-reflect and try and make amends, I am very open to it, but not until they acknowledge the non-monetary favoritism as well. Do your grandparents know? My grandparents are fully caught up. They already knew it was skewed. Part of why I'm not overly concerned with settling the score, for lack of a better phrase, is that I have now been told in no uncertain terms I will come out of this better off. I know now that any relationship with my brother or older sister is almost certainly beyond repair. I've accepted that. I think letting my parents ease their conscience by throwing money at the problem will only lead to them not actually taking accountability for their actions. So, very clearly not the butthole. You know, the story started off with him keeping score and leaving a dinner, and they go, "You ruined it, you made it a big thing." He didn't throw a tantrum, he didn't scream at anybody, he just walked out and his feelings were hurt. And rightfully so. They belittle him and they brag to his face about how great they are and how things are handed to them and how little he has and whatever. And it's very unfortunate and it's sad. And I know the whole post basically revolves around money, but at the heart of it, it has nothing to do with that. I mean, even his parents been like, "Hey, we'll give you money to, get in good graces again." He's like, "I don't want the money. I want you to love me." And I don't know what happened along the way that it got so skewed, where I'm sure even the older siblings, if there is ever some sort of emotional redemption arc, is that they treat their relationships, it's all transactional, where your money is how much you're loved and how great you are. And her parents kind of taught the kids by purpose or on accident that that's how they show their love and that's how they show their care. And it's really unfortunate because now everyone's kind of skewed and OP is the only one who's really just trying to feel cared about and feel seen and feel loved, and no one's there except his grandparents. And the one people that are like, "Hey, we care about you, we know you, and we bond with you," is the one thing where the other siblings are like, "Hey, you should sell that, get the money, let's get more out of that." He's like, I have somebody who cares about me. I don't want more money. So it's really just a mess, and it just goes to show how fast money can kind of destroy things. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've shelled out to different kids. So, you got to be careful and not letting money rule the heart of a family, really. So I feel bad. I feel really bad for everyone involved, but hopefully, he walks out of this clean. I hope somehow, there's a come to Jesus moment and people can kind of rebuild and forgive and be like, we don't care about money. Maybe the stock market crashes and maybe everyone just loses everything and they say, "Well, what do we have now? All we have is each other, and let's build on that." But I don't know. You can really just only hope for the best for them and going forward. Story 4. My brother-in-law just told my wife he is in love with her. Anyway, yesterday my brother-in-law out of the blue asks my wife if she can meet him for lunch. There is something he needs to talk to her about. My wife tells me about it before accepting and asks if it might have something to do with my sister. Maybe they are having problems and he wants to discuss it with another woman. I find it odd, but I tell her to go find out. So she accepts and they meet for lunch at a place near her office the next day. That's where he tells her that he is in love with her. He lays it on thick, how beautiful she is, how she makes him feel, how he would treat her if she were his, how it was love at first sight, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, this man is married to my sister and has 2 kids. He and my wife had a friendly relationship. Our families see each other often as we are a close family. He does text her frequently, but there was nothing overtly sexual. My brother-in-law texts and calls my mom too, so none of us thought anything of it. I want to stop a moment and emphasize that my wife isn't cheating on me with him. My wife and I share an iPad and I see every one of her texts from there. We are also looking at each other's phones all the time, so none of that is going on. So she doesn't let him finish, walks out and calls me immediately to tell me what happened. While she is on the phone with me, the texts from him start. He didn't mean it. He thinks it's only infatuation, blah blah blah. She leaves work early to come home to talk to me about this, and her phone is blowing up the entire time with calls and texts from him. I tell her to answer, and she put him on speaker so I can hear. He's crying, begging not to tell my sister. Apparently, when we were together this past weekend, he thought she was flirting with him and that he thought he had a moment where they were alone in our kitchen. Now my wife is a major ballbuster, and I suppose I can see how that can be taken as flirting. He asks if she told me, to which I answer, yes, I am on the speaker. Then he starts begging me. This went on a while. My main question was whether he had cheated on my sister before. He said no, swore on his kids' lives. It's just my wife, he said I should understand. So I'm done listening at that point and told him I wasn't going to do anything tonight, I would call him tomorrow. That's where we are right now, and I really don't know what to do. My wife says drive over there right now and tell my sister, but the idea of wrecking my sister's family is killing me. Thinking about what it will do to my nieces makes me want to vomit. I know the right thing to do is to tell my sister, but I'm also thinking about my wife as well. It's not her fault, but there is sure to be resentment toward her from my family. Even if my sister doesn't divorce him and they reconcile, I can't see how we are ever together again like we were before, if at all. This whole episode can tear my family apart. I don't give a crap about him, he tried to destroy my family, but I do care about everyone else. I don't know what to do. Any advice will help. Update. So everyone told me last night that I couldn't wait to tell my sister was right. A little after 12 last night, I get a call from my sister, and it says that she has to tell me that my wife tried to begin an affair with her husband, so he tried to pin it on her. I told her that's not the case and I will be right over. So I get on the phone, wake my mother and father, tell them what's going on, wake my younger brother, and tell him. My mom and dad head to my sister's to sit with their kids, and my brother comes to our house to sit with ours and my wife, and I head over. My sister is out on the front porch with my brother-in-law when we get there. He looks beaten. He knows we have texts and voicemail. I really don't know what he was hoping to accomplish. My wife gives my sister her phone. She sees the texts, listens to the voicemail, and he starts sobbing before she can say anything. My brother-in-law is a firefighter, a big tough guy, so this is a scene. My sister is pretty tough. She tells him to stop it, pack a bag, and go. She can't stand to look at him. There's more begging, but she has no patience for it. So my sister walks off to talk with my wife. I see them hugging, so at least I feel like they are okay. They've actually been friends since college. I met my wife through my sister, so they are tight. The thought of this wrecking her friendship had been weighing on me. This leaves me with my brother-in-law. He's broken, so I feel more sympathy than anger. He says he's sorry, he just couldn't help it. It's not hard to fall in love with my wife, so I get it, but dang man. He eventually picks himself up and leaves. So we are there all night. My sister starts asking my wife why her husband would think any of this would work out. He had to have some reason to believe that she felt the same way. My sister says they hadn't been having problems. Everything was as it had always been. My wife is crying at this point and says there's nothing you haven't seen. She gives my sister her phone again, and they read every text ever sent over the past 2 years. Nothing there. My wife was just herself. She has a playful personality, and so does my brother-in-law, so they tease each other. She does the same to my mom and younger brother as well. The only thing she could think of was the moment in the kitchen this past weekend he referenced. They both went for the fridge at the same time and they playfully jostled for who should get there first. He lets her win, but he reaches around her waist to get a beer slowly, and she did feel the way that he did it was a little inappropriate. She says she should have called him on it, but didn't want to make it a big thing. She feels maybe the fact that she didn't gave him hope. My sister doesn't blame her, so at least that's good. So then my sister starts going through his MacBook to see what else she doesn't know about. She's angry and frantic at this point. She guesses the password, starts searching, and finds a lot of pictures of my wife on that computer. They went back years and always isolated on just her. We had gone as couples to the Caribbean a few years earlier. My wife wore a bikini. She usually doesn't, but since it was adults only, she did. There were probably 50 of her in that bathing suit, so he's secretly been snapping these for years. Does this now enter restraining order territory? This is taking a creepy turn. I'll update when I have more. Relevant comments. User 1. The fact that you so casually said you wouldn't do anything tonight and you would call him tomorrow and not tell your sister ASAP is highly suspect. I can't imagine a situation where any man would want to have lunch with my wife alone to share something with her, and I'd be okay with that. You really said wait until tomorrow after he professed his undying love to your wife? Something is afoot and there is more to the story that you're not sharing. OP. We are all pretty close. My sister and my wife are college friends and we are family. I know this guy well, he's not a stranger. I just needed some time to process. My whole life just changed. User 2. He does text her frequently, but there was nothing overtly sexual. So since the constant text to your wife from your sister's husband were only a bit sexual, you let it slide? Anyways, I can't believe you didn't go straight to your sister's to tell her and beat his butt. OP. The text never crossed the line. I see all of them and he knows that. We are family and never occurred to me or my wife that things could take this turn. Like I said, my wife is a ballbuster and she treated him like a brother, like family. Update. I've shared with my wife many of your comments. It makes her feel better that virtually everyone here holds her blameless. It makes her feel better, so thank you. Unfortunately, the mess continues. My sister agreed to talk to her husband last night and let him explain. She puts my wife on FaceTime during this conversation so there will be no lying. I'm listening in as well off camera. My sister is also recording the whole thing. He admits he's been obsessed with my wife for years. It started the day he met her. My wife and I were dating at the time, but he met my wife before he met me. Like I said, my wife and sister are longtime friends, and my sister wanted to introduce her boyfriend to her friends. He thought it was only physical for a while, but over time, he knew it was more. My sister nearly kicks him out right there, but listens a little more, and she eventually asks what made him think that my wife would leave me for him. He answers that there was obviously mutual attraction, and he figured it would begin as an affair, and then things would progress from there. My wife and sister explode at that point. A lot of cussing, a lot of screaming. Phone call is over. My wife hangs up because at this point she is concerned for me. She's shaken and distraught, assures me the attraction was one-sided. I never thought it wasn't. Even if she did find him physically attractive, I know she would never act on it. She's just not the type. Early on in our relationship, she caught me admiring her as she was dressing, asked if I liked what I saw before her face turned cold, and told me never to screw up or I'd never see it again. She meant it. She's serious about trust. Anyway, I knew my brother-in-law was a little cocky, but my God, I never knew he thought that highly of himself to be able to pull off something like this. I talked to my sister later on, and she is contacting the lawyer Monday to see what steps she can take to limit his exposure to her kids. As far as she is concerned, he is detached from reality. That's all I have for now. I'll update once the dust settles a bit. Relevant comments. User 1. My wife and I were talking about this and that's what we thought. He wanted to start an affair and then go from there. There's no way to recover from asking your sister-in-law to have an affair if the feeling isn't mutual. You've torched everything. Incredibly high-risk gambit with a low success potential. But he would have done this sooner or later with or without the kitchen incident. OP. He had made comments to me many times through the years that my wife was out of my league. I would just laugh and agree. She is. I guess he thought his gamble was not so high of a risk. Final update. This is likely to be my final update as I don't see much more happening after this besides divorce proceedings. Thanks for all the comments, they have helped my wife with some of the guilt. Anyway, my brother-in-law returned home yesterday, not because my sister wants him back, but because she can't legally stop him. They are done. I think he realizes that now. The lawyer tells my sister that since my brother-in-law's behavior over the past few days has been documented, there's a good chance she will be granted full custody. He doesn't seem to ever want to fight her on that. My sister will be fine, any love she had for him is gone and she doesn't seem to be broken up about it. The kids don't know what happened yet, but my brother-in-law was never around much anyway when the kids were home. He slept at the fire station many nights and put in a lot of overtime. But it is certain to be hard on them once they know what's going to happen. Many commenters have said that there must be more women, but as far as we can tell, there hasn't been. It's really just the obsession with my wife. She has blocked his phone, but on the same night he returned home, he sends my wife an email from an account he just made. It started with an apology, but then took a turn. He said he never got to finish at the restaurant that day. Then he went on for paragraphs and paragraphs about all the things he loves about my wife and the desperation he felt that led him to do what he did. He mentioned their mutual attraction again and the sexual tension that he always felt was between them, and ended with a rather large section about me. Let's just say, I didn't know he had such a low opinion of me. He was quite certain that I was not satisfying my wife properly. Anyway, we sent the email to my sister and it will go to the lawyer. It might be enough to get him removed from the house. Finally, my wife isn't great, but she is doing better every day. She does blame herself for being too comfortable around my brother-in-law. She is always careful to set boundaries with other men. In case you haven't figured it out already, my wife is pretty stunning and gets a lot of male attention. But with my brother-in-law, she felt safe to be herself since he was family. Surely no lines would be crossed. She and my sister are cool and there doesn't appear to be any resentment, so that makes me happy. We will all be okay, it will just take time. Thanks to all who commented and voiced their support. Relevant comments / additional info. User 1. What a bomb that he threw in to blow everything up. Please take steps to secure your home and car. Recommend a restraining order so he can't come around trying to explain or convince or apologize to your wife. Hoping your sister can do what needs to be done and can move on to a better life. OP. I don't think my brother-in-law is dangerous, just conceited. The guy was quite the ladies' man before getting married and still got plenty of attention even after. His ego is bruised, but I do have cameras and an alarm. User 2. Thank you for sharing this sad story. It's been helpful for me. My wife has been casually pursued by a married member of my club, and she is usually too surprised and modest to assume what he's after. When he first started, my wife thought it was just harmless banter, but I didn't, and I told her I didn't think so. As it continued, she finally realized I was right, so when I had to tell him to knock it off, she was relieved. It took 3 incidents for him to finally get the message. OP. My wife is mad at herself because she is usually so careful. She's had so many incidents when she was younger with guys she was friendly to that ended up making unwanted advances. Oh man, do any of these have a happy ending? It's so hard to read. I'm hoping that it does. I'm hoping that it continues on and that life just got so good that's why they stopped posting. But, you know, it sucks that this guy just really threw a bomb into everybody's life. I mean, the kids, I feel first and foremost the worst for the kids always, even though OP says that he didn't have a great relationship with his kids and the guy was always at the fire station and whatever, but that's still their dad, you know? Like that kind of relationship is now forever strained. And the family life, and though the wife might be over him, but still, like, you know, you love this guy for years and it's not going to be that quick. Everything has changed and it's going to take time to move on. It's going to take time to heal. So I feel so bad for that family, and hopefully they can move into, you know, a better era and a better life. But like, they didn't even know anything was wrong. Like, there were no signs. This guy was secretly for years harboring a crush, infatuation, whatever he wants to call it, an obsession for real with these creepy photos and everything, and nobody knew. So it wasn't like you had a ramp up to everything falling apart. He's just like, oh, by the way, family life, it's over. And this other family, I mean, OP and his wife, like, they also have to deal with the falling out and the family life changes, mom, dad, all of that. Like, everything is shaken up because of this one guy. And it sucks that the wife feels guilty. I definitely understand her perspective of, you have to be careful with how playful and casual you can be with people, especially if you're in a relationship or if this person might potentially be attracted to you. Where, you know, I'm also very playful and it comes off as flirting, and I've gotten myself into trouble a couple times. And, you know, it sucks that you can't really just be friendly with everybody, or else some people get the wrong idea and there's misinterpretation. And it sucks even more that this wife was trying to be careful about that because it had happened before, but that she was only being her playful self because it was within the confines of the family, within the group of people, that there wouldn't be some misunderstanding. Yet, lo and behold, she's like, well, finally I can drop the banter and I can just kind of talk to them like he's my brother and goof around. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, she loves me. And it sucks. And it all fell apart. And hopefully she doesn't blame herself too much. But again, that whole family blew up and you don't want someone to kind of harbor that guilt. And props to OP, you know, I mean, he didn't really blink or bat an eye at any of this. He's like, yeah, I know my wife's freaking hot. She's sweet. She loves me. I know we're good. So I love their relationship, and hopefully he can make sure that she feels comforted and safe and everything's all right going forward. But you know what? They all end sad. They all end sad, and hopefully that's why they stopped posting it, because they found peace. They found goodness. So that's all.